Prescot lanes, medieval tales within the veins, ghosts of Shakespeare in the air, timeless stories told with care. History lives in every street, echoes where past and present meet. Prescot town's treasure found, ancient magic all around. Cobblestones and market squares, fabled charm beyond compare. Boundaries of a town so grand, Shakespeare's whisper in the sand.
One of my favourite things in going to any town or village throughout the land is walking around churchyards. It's not unusual to see me looking around the churchyard, reading the graves, and just discovering more about the place where you are visiting. I mean, because this is like a time capsule. This literally, every churchyard you go to tells a different story about the town or village or city that we live in. And churches and churchyards are one of my favourite things to look at, basically. If you want to know anything about a town or village, go to the churchyard. It tells you everything you need to know. Also, it puts you in touch with your Anglo-Saxon roots, because the way the graves are orientated from west to east is very much the same tradition that we've been using since the 5th century AD, and possibly even earlier than that, from the birth of Christianity, which was to orientate the deceased from east to west. East would be the laying of the feet, and the head will lay in the west. And it was all to do with the movement of the sun. It would rise in the east and set in the west. So think of that when you go round a churchyard, and think of that especially when you go around Prescot Churchyard. Now, specifically, this vlog isn't really about the churchyard, but it is in a way, because there is a mystery, and you may have heard me talking about this place in various vlogs, and you may not actually have joined the dots as to where it is. I'm talking about Butcher's Nook. Now, Butcher's Nook is one of those places that, I suppose, whether it goes down in folklore or not, or whether you can call it notorious, it's uncertain, because what we know about Butcher's Nook is quite honestly thin on the ground. I know certain things about Butcher's Nook, and I'm going to tell them to you now, but there's lots more to be discovered. There's a big mystery about Butcher's Nook. Butcher's Nook was actually situated here, in this entire area here. Before it was a churchyard, it was known as Butcher's Nook, and it was known as Butcher's Nook at least until 1848, when the last maps were drawn of this area. Butcher's Nook was still here, 1848. it was filled in soon after that. So it was here before this area was a churchyard. It was here before this area became known as Pottery Meadow and Church Croft. It was here before the Industrial Revolution. It was here before the advent of the fledgling pottery industry in Prescot. It was here at the very start of watchmaking, and possibly before watchmaking, in fact most definitely before Prescot became known as a watchmaking centre. It was here at the start of the original church on the hill in the 5th century AD. Butcher's Nook is one of those places that has gone down in folklore and what went on here. Well, it was to do with the Prescot market. The market that was decreed to Prescot in the 14th century, and I'll put the dates up. William de Decree obtained a market to hold in Prescot, and that market developed a thriving industry. It grew and grew and became very successful in the area. In southwest Lancashire, became one of the most successful markets. From the start, there was a butchery here. Basically, there were buildings here. There was a suite of buildings here, including slaughterhouses, including shops where you could buy butchered meat. And over in that direction, probably where Greenall Court is now, was a place called Carver's Yard. Carver's Yard, as the name implies, is where the meat was carved for Butcher's Nook. So they would basically what would happen is at Butcher's Nook, the outlying farms would drive their cattle into the market and sell their cattle at market for a good price, hopefully, and the butchers here, an army of butchers, would slaughter the cattle, and this is where you would buy your meat, at the market. Now, the Anglo-Saxons and the Elizabethans liked to see what they were eating. So when the cattle were brought in from various farms and they would pour into the mother town of Prescot, to the mother church, the township, a tiny township controlling a massive parish. So the people from the farmers from the parish would come to Prescot to sell their cattle and to get good prices for it. So at slaughter time, they'd come here and they would be dispatched. So it's a place of great misery, you could say, for the cattle, that is. We have no photographs or drawings of Butcher's Nook. So because it disappeared in about 1850, it was at the very birth of photography. So if we do have photographs, I'll put them up. It's very doubtful that we will, but you never know. But we do have photos of the approach to Butcher's Nook at the turn of the century. So we've got them that show what it must have been like to enter Butcher's Nook. Now, Butcher's Nook, it went round here, right up to what is known as Priest's Coat, which gives Prescot its name. So there was a priest's coat there, and it is clearly defined on early maps, Priest's Coat. So I envisage it would have taken over all of this area here where these graves are now. So in 1850, at the very start of the Industrial Revolution, this was filled in. And in 1978, Liverpool University did a study. It was called the Prescot Area Action Plan. an archaeological view. And they did an archaeological survey of Prescot and the surrounding areas here. And they did test pits and stuff like that, to gain archaeological knowledge about the town, as you would. The only place they couldn't do a test pit was here in the graveyard, for obvious reasons. Since then, since the 1850s, this has been filled with souls and the departed, all here. So it's on sacred ground. Nobody can dig here. So everywhere else they digged in Prescot, they were finding scant remains of early Prescot, because they were looking for medieval prehistoric remains of Prescot. They did find some prehistoric evidence of farming in Prescot in some of the pits, and some Georgian pottery and various things like that, but they couldn't find anything earlier. And the reason for that is because Prescot has had hundreds and hundreds of years of occupation, and during that occupation the ground has been turned up so much. The Georgians, for instance, when they were building their houses on Eccleston Street and all the streets around, they built cellars underneath, and the cellars would have destroyed the archaeology that lay beneath it. So to get any archaeology, you really have to do a concerted effort and perhaps get the time team in or something like that on a piece of land and discover more about the archaeology of Prescot. Now Prescot, like every other northern town, is scant on that kind of knowledge and information, and that's why in the north of England there's a lot to be discovered in the north, because most of the archaeologists are working down south in places like Wiltshire and around London, and all the southern counties have been absolutely magnificent finds and loads of archaeology down here. In the north, well, we're the poor relations, aren't we? We don't get that much attention from archaeologists, and when we do, they haven't got the funding to do what the things they need to do. But in the south, they just seem to be able to get on with it. It's one of those things about the north-south divide. So when the archaeologists from Liverpool University came along in 1998, they identified Butcher's Nook as a place of great archaeological significance, because this hasn't been disturbed. Apart from the graves, that archaeologically speaking are quite shallow, they haven't had basements sunk or anything like that. This is like a time capsule of Prescot pre-industrial. So pre-industrial, it missed out all that industry, the changing of the roads, the building of new buildings on top of it, the building of buildings on top of it for a start. That's a great thing. So this is like stepping back, literally stepping back in time. All this area here of Prescot, if you know Prescot, you know where this area is. It's going down the Brew here, on what was called, it used to be called Churchcroft, and it was called Pottery Fields as well, Pottery Croft, sorry. So yeah, it's this area, the middle bit of the churchyard. It's not the cemetery, which is further on, which opened in 1922, I think that was. It's the actual churchyard. So this is a real mystery and a fantastic thing for Prescot, even though we don't know that much about it. Well, there is some stuff we know about it, because I can tell you for certain that you may have been into St.Mary's Church here, and you may have looked up at the lovely ceiling that they have there, the lovely Jacobean ceiling, possibly the best Jacobean beams and wood in all of southwest Lancashire. It can be certain, and you can be certain, that the timbers in the church there, they're blackened. Well, they're blackened because they've been treated with ox blood. And that ox blood would have come from Butcher's Nook here. It was a byproduct, ox blood, but it became a very valuable commodity to the Tudors and to the Jacobeans building wooden houses, because they would paint ox blood onto the wood, and the ox blood would become oxidized, where we get the word oxidization from, oxidize, and that would preserve the wood, and that's why we still have it today. So every time you go into St. Mary's Church, think about Butcher's Nook. It's a fascinating part of Prescot's history, and the reason why it's here by the church so much is because in medieval times, since at least the 14th century, going right up to the 18th century, the consumption of meat was regulated by the church and the lord of the manor. You could only eat meat on certain days. You could only buy meat from the authorities, like the church and lord of the manor, so the profits went back to them. So you could only buy it on certain days, you could only on market days, and you could only consume it on them days. The cheaper meats, like fowl and stuff like that, they were always available, but things like ox meat and pig meat and stuff like that were strictly regulated. Now, if William Shakespeare had have come to Prescot, he would have visited Butcher's Nook. There's no doubt about that, because that would be a place where you can get your sausages and your bacon. And what's an English breakfast without sausage and bacon? So it would have been. Since then it's changed beyond all belief, but it just goes to show that history is everywhere we look in Prescot, and finding out these little nuggets of history about Prescot gives us a whole new way of looking at things. We look at things differently when we know different things about it. So I hope you've enjoyed this vlog, and if you have, then please give us a like, and share on your social media feed, and leave a comment. Always interested in reading your comments. You may realise that we've been fully funded on YouTube now, so watch all the adverts right through to the end, even if you hate them. Just make a cup of tea and come back to them later. It just all adds to the algorithm, and it helps us do things like this, or me do things like this. I'm on my own today, so I've got the camera propped up on an old church wall here, but I'll leave you with some images of Butcher's Nook, what was Butcher's Nook, and some views of the churchyard. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in another vlog. Bye for now.
Timber frames and rustic charm, ancient signs that disarm. Prescot breathes with life anew. Every corner has a view. Timber frames and rustic ancient signs that disarm. Prescot breathes with life anew. Every corner has a view.